Thanks so much to everybody for joining us for our first one of our series of career and identity intersections panels. Today's session is going to be focused on conversations surrounding women. Before we get started, I want to go over a couple of virtual communal agreements just to make sure our time together is really productive. If you are not one of the panelists speaking, go ahead and mute your microphone. That'll make sure that the audio quality for our session is really good and that there's no feedback or echoing or other problems. You can feel free to go ahead and turn on your closed captions if you want to make sure that you're catching every word that our panelists are saying and that you don't miss anything. Go ahead and do that just in case there are any audio problems. The transcription for this is really good, so it'll catch everything. You can choose as a participant to either keep your video on or off, but our presenters will be using both audio and video. If you have any questions that you want to ask our panelists, feel free to drop them in the chat box at any point. If they're super timely, Jenna, our moderator today, will go ahead and ask the panelists, but if not, we'll save them to our open Q&A session at the end. To make everybody aware, we are recording this presentation and we'll be sharing it on our website and our social media platforms. With that being said, I want to go ahead and introduce our moderator for today's session, Jenna Heath. Jenna is the Director of Student and Community Engagement for the College of Liberal Arts at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. She is a 2016 alumna from UNLV with an MED, and she is a graduate of San Diego State University with a Bachelor of Arts in Communication and Political Science. Jenna teaches several courses across UNLV surrounding career and professional development, and her research interests include professional and career development in curriculum at the university level. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Jenna.
Thanks, Lynn. Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session. We're so excited for y'all to be with us, and thank you to our incredible panelists. We're excited to get to know you all a little bit better. So without further ado, we're kind of just going to jump in with introductions. So panelists, if you just want to go ahead and briefly introduce yourself, where do you work, what is the work that you do there, and maybe briefly kind of what does your day-to-day look like, whether that's pre-COVID or during what's going on in the world right now.
Hey, I'm Izzy Shaindlin. I work at Lettuce Entertain You Restaurants, and we are based out of Chicago, Illinois. I have worked for Lettuce Entertain You since the end of 2013, so just over about 6.5 years. Prior to that, I had worked at one of our restaurants in the Chicagoland area. So I did have a little experience with the company prior to getting a full-time salaried position postgraduate. However, I do love what I do. I'm in human resources, I'm in recruiting. We have about 120 restaurants across the country. Right now, of course, we're dealing with shutdowns and restaurants kind of still reopening. So at this point in time, I'm not sure about what our number is, but definitely seeing with things progressing, more action. So I am the manager of our internship program. I work specifically to recruit interns and then also work to transition them to full-time positions. And my day-to-day is always different. We can talk more about that later, I'm sure, but definitely a lot of recruiting, interviewing, networking, but also manage our social media page for culture. So yeah, a little bit of everything. And right now it's a little bit different due to COVID, but definitely seeing some differences in our work that are exciting, getting to transition our internship to being fully remote this summer. So that's a little bit about me.
Hello, this is Shala Fayaspur. Very nice to meeting all of you. And I am a visiting professor at UNLV Department of Teaching and Learning. I graduated and I got my PhD from UNLV in multicultural education. And my background, I am immigrant and I am working here. I have been a student for a long time, and as a woman of color, I had many experiences that I thought maybe it can be helpful for others to share. Or if anybody has any question, maybe I can help. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Payne. I work for UPS, or United Parcel Service. Graduated from UNLV, and my role is I'm the director of our global help desk. So we take my group takes inbound calls or emails or chats from customers or employees, really, all over the world through different locations. We have one of those locations here in Las Vegas, so we have a group of tech support reps here in Las Vegas, as well as some customer service folks. I worked my way up through that location here in Vegas. So I did plenty of call center representative types of roles through my career, including coaching people on calls, supervising different shifts, and then really, becoming a manager and then a site director. So in recent times, within the last year, we've restructured. So my role is more global than it was previously, whereas I was only really overseeing Las Vegas. Now I oversee different operations in Shenzhen, China, Budapest, Hungary, Bertheville location out of Clark in the Philippines. And we're looking to bring on, or under our kind of jurisdiction, some Mexico and Canada work as well. But really, day to day, I'm looking at the performance of our individual call center reps in terms of really how they roll up on a customer satisfaction level or a productivity basis, as well as, their career development and what they want to do when they grow up. So it's a little bit about me.
My name is Dr. Katrina Birus, and I'm CEO and founder of a company called MKB, Excellent Executive Coaching Company. It's both in Las Vegas, but also in Switzerland. We do two things. We fast track leaders to the C-suite and beyond, and we transform what I call affectionately brilliant jerks into inspiring leaders. So in this body of work, we've applied it to the United Nations, to Nestle, to the World Health Organization. I just want to tell you that 74% of the leaders have had one intolerable boss. So that means you students, 3 out of 4 of you in your career will meet a brilliant jerk, or a difficult boss, to say it more politely. So that's going to happen. It probably will. And maybe you will become a difficult leader. Who knows? So I'll just leave you with that thought.
Hi, I'm Miranda. I'm the recruiter for Utah, Nevada with Peace Corps. We're a government agency that takes qualified U.S. citizens abroad to work for 2 years in countries that have requested aid. And so my work is helping people who are interested in being part of our programs work through the application process. And so I answer questions. I do a lot of presentations in classrooms, in different community centers, but since COVID, kind of online, doing more virtual recruitment than I was before, which was more personal.
Well, thank you everyone for introducing yourself and sharing briefly. It's really exciting to have such a diverse group of folks on this call and have different backgrounds and things like that. I think it's going to be awesome. So with that being said, getting to know you all a little bit better, I know one of the questions we very often get from students is like, what type of degree do you need to go into that industry or field? So if you all don't mind sharing, if you have a degree, what is it in? And is it relevant to the work you're doing right now? And if not, or maybe if it is there any additional training or education you think that's helpful that you do have for your position? And we can just start with Randy since you went last, and then you can ping pong from there.
Yeah, so I have a bachelor's degree in business management from Brigham Young University. For my current position, it helped to have served in the Peace Corps myself, but I have several friends in recruiter positions that are not working for my agency. and really a bachelor's degree or a master's. But if you are looking to do more international work, then you do need most of the time a master's degree. And then I will pass it to Sarah.
Thank you, Randy. So I mentioned earlier I graduated from UNLV, so I also have a business degree. I know, rebels. That's why I'm wearing red today. And my degree is also in management. So, you know, one thing I always tell my folks about part of my training time at UNLV was I was gonna major in economics because I really love economics, and I'm just, you know, fascinated by kind of all the big levers and things out there that twist and turn. But my professor, and I wish I could remember his name right now, said something to the class, and he was definitely a management professor. So he was very biased, but he said to the folks like, hey, you know, if you plan to go up in the ranks, just keep in mind you're not going to actually do economics. You know, that was what I heard him say anyway, because he was talking to me in my head. And he said, you're going to want to be focused on how to manage people. And that really resonated with me because I had been already in the management field, and I definitely hold that close to how I manage today. So, I mean, you know, being director of the help desk, the reality is that, you know, a little bit of my job is IT and making sure that I stay up to date on that kind of stuff. But the reality is, you know, I have over 400 employees, and I really need to know how to manage people, because what I see sometimes is the difference there is that without that insight and that higher level of understanding that, you can make some wrong decisions that are more business, you know, too business related in terms of the money or what have you. So understanding what motivates people is a big part of what I have to do every day. And so very relevant, you know, I made the switch from economics to management at that point, and always kind of dabbling with the thought of, you know, continuing on to get a master's, because formal education is definitely relevant to my field, my company, UPS. Really, you can't expect to move up in the, you know, higher levels without more higher formal education. But in terms of other things, you know, definitely staying up to date on IT and ITIL standards and things like that for the industry.
I did several degrees. I had to prove that I was better than my brothers. I had 4 of them. But so I did a degree on global studies, which was an MBA of sorts from the University of Arizona Graduate School. That helped very much because I went to Switzerland and worked in finance, and so it gave me a basis. But after 5 years in finance, I wanted to do something else. So I went back and did another master's to get a PhD in human and organizational development and a PhD in organizational systems. How did it help? For one, I edited the CEO's speeches to his people, his strategic speeches. It helped me, one, structure my thoughts. It helped me edit his. It helped me tell him this is a new idea, this is a bad idea, or it's old idea. And so it was instrumental in being convincing. Plus in business, it helped me. I could work with the research center of Nestle. I could work with the CERN that does research work in physics. Now, that was my worst grade, physics, but it doesn't matter. They do research all day. I'm a researcher because that's how it's perceived. If you do PhD, you do research. It was very instrumental, immediate credibility. So, but I want to tell you one thing though. I did interview the CEO and past chairman of Nestle, and I asked, now, what would you look for in a student that you want to hire? And you can get a cum laude, you can get the best of the crop. He says, I don't want a cum laude. I said, why in the world do you not want the best of the crop? And he said, because, in fact, I'd rather the second, the third, because they know that there's better, for one, and the attitude. And two, in 7 years, at most, what they've learned is no longer relevant. So the message is you got to constantly learn. And it's, you get your degree, but down the line, things change. Go back to university and do it. It certainly has helped my career. Let's have Randy.
Sorry, I already went.
Okay.
Sorry, Randy. Let's have Shala.
Yes. As I said, I am an immigrant and I came with my 2 daughters here. I didn't know anything about the educational system here, and I had no clue about, the school, how girls, go to school, and it was the cultural differences. That's why I had many, many difficulties with my kids to go to school. And for myself, because I didn't have any experiences with education. And I helped, my daughter had difficulties, but I helped them. And after years, they were successful. And this was my concern that, why immigrant students, they don't have any help here, and TESOL, it wasn't in endorsement, or it wasn't in program anymore. And it was my concern. I got my master in TESOL and at UNLV, and I was really concerned again about immigrant students. That's why I got my PhD in multicultural education, and I really wanted to help immigrant students, all the students, minorities, especially immigrant students, because I believe if my daughters, they could be successful, all students, they have ability to be successful. They just need help. And I worked in a school as a substitute teacher for 5 years, and as a coordinator for TESOL for 2 years. And this helped me to see the issues that we have in a schools, additional to experiences that I had. And right now I teach teachers, and I believe all these, they were related to each other. And it helps me when I teach teachers and I talk about my experience, personal experience, and also professional experiences that I have. They really like it. And when they give me feedback at the end of the class, they say that, we really like the experiences, because storytelling, I believe it's really helpful for others to get confidence, for especially for women. And that's why I really believe in education that can helps everybody, to be successful, but we have to know how to help students.
Izzy, I think we saved best for last.
Oh, great. And I accidentally went first. I'm so sorry. That was not my intention. But I went to school at a Division III volleyball college that I decided to basically go to based on where I wanted to play volleyball. Liberal arts education. So I was a communication and public relations double major, and a business administrative minor. So it's not as crazy as it seems, because again, I had very small classroom sizes. My focus was on volleyball, although that was a fall sport. I definitely wanted to keep my schooling up, of course, because that's important. But I learned throughout college that I loved working with people, and I loved being around others who wanted to innovate. I liked being the support team. So falling into an HR job after college was sort of lucky, but in the right way, I took advantage of it because there was an opportunity to get into the recruiting side. I think that it's really admirable. Everyone's background here is so unique, and I love that there's so much of a business focus, because I do feel like having a business background can lead you anywhere. I certainly didn't think I'd be in human resources, because I really thought they do the rules and all that sort of stuff. But I've learned throughout being in human resources, one, my company isn't super picky about having a background unless you're in accounting or something analytical focused. For our IT members, a lot of our graphic designers, majority of our human resources department, we do not have certain degrees and we don't look for certain degrees. That's because our founder flunked out of college twice, and he's an entrepreneur at heart. He doesn't want necessarily everybody to flunk out of college, but we definitely, for our internship program, 20% of our base of student or interns are not students. They are internally from one of our restaurants, or they are from outside of the company, maybe not in school right now. So I love that we have that mishmash of blend of students, because then we have that student base, the people that aren't enrolled in school, and then together there's that kind of innovative push that they do. So my degree is relevant to what I do every day, but I didn't get a degree in HR necessarily to be doing what I'm doing today. But hey, they trust me to look at a lot of people's privy information. So I think that trust goes a long way with your employer. So definitely, if you get to that point where you're doing very, intuitive things within your company that they're trusting with you, that means a lot. So that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies, for sharing. This is awesome. And so I guess we're going to transition a little bit. And there's so many great questions we could ask about really how you got to where you're at today in your career. But to kind of hone us in a little bit, I'm going to focus on the last question on the screen, which is, what is one mistake you've made from your career journey and how did you learn from it? I think something we really try to encourage our students and alumni with is integrating that growth mindset into their life and understanding that there's always ability to learn and grow, and failure is not final, right? So why don't each of you tell us about a mistake that you've encountered and how did you learn and grow from that? And Sarah, we'll start with you.
Thank you. I'm glad you started with me so I don't forget what I want to say here, because this question means a lot to me. So I mentioned I have, a pretty large staff of people, and sometimes I find myself giving the same speech over and over again. So I do talk a lot about how uncomfortable it is when, you actually have found an area to grow in. And, just that uncomfortability, like I kind of like to talk about, this red flag will go off for you that you're uncomfortable, and that probably means that you have something to grow in that area, or it's an area for you to improve in. So, after talking about that and really believing in it, I do try to do that as much as possible. When I look back on my career for this question specifically, I think, one thing that I've really been focused on in the last year has been, like where I'm at in my career. And I think that it's literally when you're uncomfortable, which is in my case, like, I think opening myself up for more opportunities. And, I work for UPS, which is a great company to work for, and a company where when you're young in your career, for sure, you think, and I know I did, like, I want to get my foot in the door there and, see what I can aspire to be. And I think that's the right mentality to have. But for me, I didn't go big enough. Even though probably people would say, gosh, it took her, I got to director in 12 years, that's really fast for my company. That's really long for a lot of companies. But for me, I think I needed to look outside of Vegas. I needed to be more open to the global footprint faster. And I think when it comes to my career, that would have been the biggest thing I could have done differently. But it's super uncomfortable to, want to move across the country, or look at getting out of what like, being in call centers for a long time, even though I've been saying forever that just, doesn't really matter what business you're in the business of people, like, just listening to yourself about that kind of stuff. And I wish I would have been, more willing to go big. So, that's probably what I'll focus on in the rest of my career, is to make sure that I'm not just looking like in Las Vegas, for example. That would be my answer. You want me to pass it to Izzy?
Great. That's awesome.
Thanks. So I thought about this one, and there could have been little instances that I picked out that were definitely like learning moments, like showing up late to work and kind of making it a little bit like 5 minutes here or there. And those are things that I feel like I corrected early on. Something I feel like I could have done earlier on is voiced my interest in getting promoted. There were no positions in front of me before this position as a manager of an internship program. And prior to that, if you wanted to move up in recruiting, you had to be a recruiter and do salaried hiring for our company. Luckily, our company does make up a lot of job titles, and we do like to kind of get people to where they want to be. So with the help of a mentor, I was able to get myself to that next level, but it did take some hard conversations about money and where I wanted to be in a couple of years, and does this career path make sense for me? So I think some people stick in the same job path for too long, and maybe that's why they get a little bit worn out or tired and it starts to affect them. But before any of that gets too far, I think, you have to have that realization moment, and mine was just making sure that I started to voice a little bit more. I'm kind of a passive person, so I wanted to be a team player and be there for what I was doing, but now I realize I wanted to grow and actually get to that manager level as I'm nearing my 30s. So that would be my biggest career journey mistake, but I'll pass it over to Randy.
Yeah, one of the things I think is important about this question is that they are learning experiences. But for me, I mean, I have several options, but one I want to talk about today is accepting other people's view of my value, and not learning how to negotiate and stand up for myself earlier on in my career, because that I think really affected the first several years of me working, as accepting what other people viewed as the value of my work, first being like, I know what my value is, and I'm going to find somewhere that will give me that. And I will pass it on to Katrina.
Yes. So my mistake, like I would just make comment on Shala and some of your comments, and then add something that no one else has said. Shala, she was an immigrant. She's multicultural in a sense, and she made her work out of it. It made it a competitive advantage with immigration people and learning institutions. So that's wonderful. So my message is leverage what you have. And what uniqueness you have. So my biggest mistake is that I went to work for a Swiss bank. I'm older than you. So it was in a time that was Credit Suisse, and it was very traditional and very built practically on the military system. So all the vocabulary was military. Well, it happens to be that only 2% of women of the whole company were in top management, okay? So that is not a conducive environment for a woman that works twice as hard. And I saw men that had less results, didn't work as hard, be promoted before me, even though I was promised, for example. So my message is really find out the corporate culture. I'm Swiss and American. I grew up in Switzerland and Italy and Spain. So I'm a bit multicultural, and I'm also American. If I had chosen American bank in Switzerland, I would have had a competitive advantage because I'm binational for sure. You see what I mean? So find out what is unique. I think that's is really important. And my biggest mistake is that I didn't see that I was rowing counter current. I would have to work harder, longer in this kind of environment. So my suggestion is really look into a company before you go and work for it. Do they promote women? Are they favorable? Do you like the mission they have? Do you share their values? See, I wasn't started in finance, and then after 5 years, my heart wasn't in it. So I had to change. So I had to leave finance comfy, well organized, had mortgages on the house, to go to something I didn't know the foggiest what I was going to do. So I would also say stay within comfort, but go for what you love, go what you really believe in. I know it's a risky business, but that's what I would suggest. And the next person will be Ellen. No?
It's okay. We can go to Shala again.
Okay, Shala.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thanks, Katrina.
Katrina. Thank you, Katrina, for your kind words. And I really believe in something that you said. Your heart should be with the job that you do. I was working in retail for like maybe 10 years. And, at first that I came here, I got my license in cosmetics, but my heart wasn't in that. And I was working also in retail. I enjoyed and I learned a lot in retail, but it wasn't something that made me happy. It couldn't make me happy. That's why I decided to go to school and just started to get my master here because I had bachelor from my country. And that was, every day gave me more confidence. Something that maybe was my mistake. I always tell myself that why I didn't start earlier. But in somehow, my answer to myself is that because of my family situation, I had to work hard and I couldn't study at the time that I come. Sometimes, we do some mistake, but in somehow, our situation, life situation is in the way that we have no choice. But something that I do right now, I'm really happy with that because I believe in somehow when I was working at a school, I felt that I can make a difference for students in a school, students that have no support at home, minor especially minority students, that they have no support at home. When they came to school and I was working with them, they got enough confidence to um, just feel that somebody hear them. And this is very important. I believe in any job there are people that they need some support, and if they get that support that they need, they can just go and improve and get better and better. And this is something that I really love to do, that for any kind of job that I do. Thank you.
That's great. I love y'all's insights on this, and you're all so different, but you all brought up really great points about mistakes. And I think the one unique thing is, right, that you all kind of use those mistakes to move forward and learn and grow. And I think that's really powerful. So the next topic we're going to dive into is employer dynamics. And I think, something that Katrina mentioned at the very beginning is that, there's you're going to work for people you don't like in your career, most likely at some point, whether you want to or not. And that can be really challenging to overcome sometimes. So one of the questions I really want to ask you all, and I'm curious of your input, is how do you navigate workplace politics? What does that look like, specifically being a woman in the workplace? And maybe what are some issues you've had to overcome in that space? So I'm gonna, Shala, let's start with you actually this time.
Yeah. When I was working in retail, I thought, politics is just in retail, and I hated that. And that's why, I said I'm not in that field because, I hate this kind of politics, especially because, English was my second language and I was an immigrant. I got a lot that, sometimes I came home and I was just crying for the thing that I got from my work. But I believe politics is everywhere. And when I switched to education, I saw that, everywhere you see that kind of politics. Maybe it's different in in different ways, but you see that. But it's very important. I learned how to manage that, how to get, and with something that I learned, out of a school, I learned how to manage politics. I don't get stuff personally, and I don't I didn't let these politics affects what I wanted to do. Sometimes something that really hurt me, it made me more strong to reach my goal. And I believe that one is important, to manage the workplace politics. and to know how to work with people and don't get stuff really personally.
That's great. Izzy, I'm going to dive into you because you're making a face.
Yeah, I was like, maybe I'll go. Okay, so my company turns 49 years old this year in about a week. So there's definitely workplace politics just because there is so many generations there. I think a lot of the time where I'll see this pop up is I hire students that are graduating from college in their younger 20s for the most part, looking for management positions. And a lot of the times, the places they want to work have employees that have been with the company for 20, 25, 30 years. So a lot of the times it is a tough transition for our younger managers to navigate those politics of servers who have been there the longest and they're used to this being this way. I think a lot of the times when I navigate workplace politics, it's because I'm in HR. I think there's always that connotation that we're the rule polices and you shouldn't tell us anything because it's not safe. I think that is starting to break down more as time goes on, and I think that more HRs are becoming more transparent, especially through this entire COVID healthcare crisis. However, I do feel like never saying anything that you would regret saying or something you would never say in front of your boss is a great way to think of it. I've gotten myself into a few situations that have been like, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but I've never gotten into that place where I said, oh my gosh, I can't believe I burned my bridge with this person here. I think if you can avoid burning bridges at your companies, even if you don't get along with everyone, like somebody had said earlier, you will avoid the politics you don't want to be involved with. The politics you do want to be involved with is being there for, hey, if your company is doing a volunteer day, or if you guys can give back to the community. I think those are the sort of politics to show up for. I'll give it over to Sarah.
Thank you. So my company was founded in 1907, so we got a couple years on you. But you can think about all the different generations we definitely have working at UPS. Our CEO just retired. I think the announcements and things were last week, and he was a 46-year long employee. So we have many situations, I think, where generational identities certainly clash at the company. One thing that we do well is to talk about those things and to try to have different diversity and inclusion things that we focus on. Replacing him was our first woman CEO, so I'm very proud of that. Her name's Carol Tomei. So she just took over the company this month, and we look forward to really a lot of changes. Not to give away too much company information, but we definitely internally, like at the water cooler, talk about the kind of the patriarchy mentality that really has driven the management policies of the last decades, and how sometimes it's just the assumptions of the way that men are viewed in the workplace that lead to policies that no one intends to have, had bad impacts, but they do. Recently, so I work for, I know I mentioned the help desk, but within UPS, you can imagine with 500,000 employees, we have many different divisions. So the group that I'm a part of, when you ask for how that second part, how my identity impacts the employer I work for, the part of the organization that I'm in is very focused on getting to that 50-50, women and men, and that's something that is very much part of my identity. I'm not too far towards the end of my career, but I've been around certainly long enough to deal with not being 50-50 and having it be impactful. And I think many large organizations do deal with a smaller percentage of women, you know, in their management ranks. So I think what is very much a part of who I am and where my company is that, you know, we're actually making a statement that it needs to be 50-50 amongst our genders, and that we are better that way, and that it's actually got a return on investment, and that, you know, that matters quite a bit to me. When it comes to navigating the politics, though, what I found is super open lines of communication. For the most part, everybody wants to do a good job, and the politics can be dissolved, not all the way, but for the most part, between two people when they share what their goals are, and just be very clear that, you know, these are the goals that I have for my position and my vision, and where you line up, and try to just find those common intersections so that you can make it through together more successfully. And I don't know, I could be long-winded and talk all day. I'll pass it back. So.
Anyone feeling it? Randy, do you want to go?
Yes. So where I'm at now with the Peace Corps, we don't have a lot of these issues because we have a very clear goal, especially in my department. And so things just kind of fall into place and people get along really well. And I think there is a huge difference between workplace politics and workplace drama. And I think that people kind of make them the same thing in their heads, but I have worked in other organizations where that has not been the case, where everything that happened in our office was navigating workplace drama and politics. And honestly, what it comes down to is you need to be professional. And so you don't have to be best friends with everyone. You don't have to like everyone, but you need to be professional in the workplace. A company that I worked for, after working there for a while, I noticed that all of the female employees were kind of the lower level employees, and the management positions were all held by men. And it was a smaller company. And I overheard my boss once say, well, there's really no point in hiring women. They'll just get pregnant and leave anyway. And I was so frustrated with that. And that is kind of when I started realizing that the social capital you have in an office and your ability to do your job is not always dependent on you, but on perceptions other people have of you based off things that you have no control over. And so you have to kind of navigate that the way that you do it best, but always staying professional is a big part of that.
I wouldn't mind going. I totally agree with Randy. Be professional and also understand the perceptions of the people around you, I think is very important. But the bottom line is you got to collaborate with all types of people, even people you don't like per se. So to get along in a very political environment. I have found, but that's my personal experience, that the more you go up, the more there's politics, and sometimes you'll find people that only depend on politics and not on professionalism. That's a risky business because, you know, a change of boss, it's a change of politics. So if you're a good professional, it's a sure bet. But I worked with a big bank and there was a lot of politics, and I'm glad today because my job is to help leaders fast track to the C-suite. And if I didn't have a clear understanding of politics today, even though I hate it with a passion, I could not help them as much. And I would say politics is also a different perspective. Like I worked with a Chinese person in a Swiss environment, and you know, a lot of Chinese to interrupt is being rude. And he was looked at for the next leader of a very important post, but they said he doesn't have the leadership vibes because he was working for a Swiss company, a Western company with Western people that are a bit alpha males, and they interrupt and they interject, and he thought that was very rude. So sometimes it's really helping the person collaborate, understand the mentality, understand what will it take to make them be perceived as good leaders. And I can say the same thing of a South American that worked for a very Midwest organization. He was much more diplomatic, and the Americans of this company that you all know the name of was a bit the cowboy, you shoot, at the, I don't know the expression. And so his diplomacy was perceived as being wishy-washy. So once you can help these leaders or understand the mentality, that's also will help you move forward in a political environment. So it's not only, trying to get the next big job, it's really also understanding, collaborating better, and understanding that different cultures, there will be a lot more misunderstandings, and you have to keep your radar open. So next, I can't see you. Jennifer, I'll need your help because I don't know, you all sort of disappeared underneath. So
You're all good. You're all good. I think Shala, is the only one left, maybe? Or no, she already went.
I said yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think we actually all went. That's pleasant. Great. So I think we're going to dive into what's probably going to be our last question. So specifically really thinking about, what a lot of you alluded to in this last answer, which thank you for your transparency. I think that's so vital for us as women to really come together and be honest with one another, and especially aspiring young leaders so they know what they're getting themselves into. But I really want to focus in on, you talked about some of the mistakes and some of the hardships, but really, what do you think are some of the actual challenges that you're facing in your industries right now as a female in the workplace? I don't know if anyone's really excited about answering that question. I know it's a little bit challenging, but Randy, do you want to go? Sure.
Yeah, I'd be happy to start. I think there are some universal things that women deal with in the workplace. And a lot of those are older perceptions that have kind of carried through because a leadership in a lot of companies are still from that older generation. Things like women aren't as dedicated because they can't work as long of hours, especially if you have a family. The idea that you can't stay until 10 at night if you need to, or get there early. Those are all perceptions, and it's exciting to see it kind of change with the new workforce with COVID, because that's kind of coming down. People can't really hide the fact that they have families anymore because kids are running into the back of meetings. I was in a meeting today where my boss's daughter started yelling from the other room, and she was like, guys, I don't know what to do. This is just what our meeting's going to be like today. And so it will be interesting to see how that changes moving forward. But there is some of that still in the workforce where we have this idea that while you're at work, work is the only thing that matters, or the only thing that you should care about. And then you should put on the perception that when you're at home, that's the same way. And it is harder for women in our culture to do that because we have a lot more of the domestic workload. And so balancing homework and all of those sort of things is a somewhat feminine challenge in a U.S. work culture.
Certainly strongly feel. This is Dr. Katrina. In fact, the fact that I was a woman once I got promoted, they always gave excuses. It was because I was a woman, or because so-and-so liked me, instead of my professionalism. So that was really very irritating. And I think also what I did was I'd never really talked too much about my children because I was working with more traditional people. And so I always talked professionally. Even though today you say you've got to be authentic, you got to show your personality, I sort of avoided that so that they didn't tag me as I couldn't be as hard a worker. The other thing is when I left the finance to start my own company in the coaching business, I had 2 years where I didn't officially have a job. So how that is a no on the CV, at least in the environment I was. So what I did is do my PhD. I took advantage of doing my PhD to do nonprofit philanthropic work. And so I always had something on my CV. So if you take time out, technically I took time out to have my 2 children. I showed something very beneficial for companies in my CV during those 2 years. Let's go to, has Sarah gone? No, yes. Jennifer, can you help me?
Yeah, Sarah, you can go. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks, Katrina. So, you know, I know I kind of went into some of this on my last answer, but, you know, some of the biggest challenges, and not necessarily at my current job, but through my career, certainly being the only woman in a room can be, you know, and I know all of us are going to nod to that because that's just part of where we're at right now in the world. So I think that's more daunting than people realize. There's a, you know, I think I tried to turn it around on men and try to give them the same type of thought of what that might feel like, and it's very difficult. So that still today, I mean, it's definitely on calls now more, you know, even in my pre-COVID life, I do a lot of conference calls, and I tend to be the sole woman voice, but that's changing, you know, definitely. One thing I would say, and I hope you all will see this too, is it's gotten harder now that there's more women. It used to be a little easier. You know, men have a certain way of challenging each other, that there's an alpha male, and if he's in charge, it's kind of going to go that way. And when you're the woman on the field, you know, you're already used to your challenging being looked at like it's not as meaningful. But when there's more women on the field, you know, we have a different way of challenging each other, and we're more than willing to all go out there with our different ideas, I think, a little bit more. So I see that and I welcome it, but I definitely feel like that's happened. I do like to, I shouldn't say it that way, but I think I recognize that, like, the bullying, the impact of bullying is you know, I don't know what the word would be, but it's definitely something that as the field changes or what have you, what women are willing to put up with is different than what men are willing to put up with when you're just in a business discussion. You know, it can be bullying to us and, you know, just playing around to the guys. So I see stuff like that is impactful. You know, UPS does a whole bunch for diversity and inclusion, like I mentioned. One of the things we do is have all generations, genders, what have you, come together and talk about the issues on a regular basis, that just like this question, so that we can be more aware and try to, you know, come up with action plans and stuff to address them. But that's my comments. And I don't know who's next either. Sorry.
No, you're all good. Izzy, you're making faces again. You can go.
I think I'm next, or somebody else is too, but who knows? Definitely agree with everybody else in those kind of overarching themes of what we as women may face in the workplace. I think that that whole connotation with being too emotional and being leaders is something that we've definitely had to overcome as, like, women in general, and I think in leadership positions anywhere. One thing I would say as far as that goes is we do have women partners, and we do have a lot of female leadership throughout the company, but since we are a larger company, I would definitely say we have a lot more of the male heavy side of that leadership still. So I think that as a company, we still are kind of growing and figuring out how that will be something that we tackle in the coming years. From other diversity standpoints, we definitely are lucky that our industry gravitates so many people towards it from all different walks of life. So I think that in certain ways we're diversified very easily by the types of people that want to work in restaurants all over the country. But I think there are things that we could be doing more of. And I think that because we are a company that isn't corporate run, we're a privately held company, and all of the restaurants, although they have access to corporate, they can go and do their own individual business endeavors. So since we aren't that overarching corporate kind of culture, a lot of those diversity and inclusion initiatives are run at more of the restaurant level and not an overarching theme. So I think that we're going to see more of that in the coming years, especially with the younger generations getting in the mix. But I can see our company focusing more on that just in general with everything that's happened and having to diversify their strategy.
I believe I'm next, yes?
Yes, you are.
Okay. I believe women's intersectional identities really affect the way that they face the challenges, and I see these a lot in our society because it depends where you are from, which race, which religion, which culture, all different kinds of intersectionalities of identities really affects the way that you can grow sometimes. Most of the time it depends, how people they value your culture, your race, your identity in total. Some people they don't value as much as they should, in different societies. And this is the problem that we really have, and sometimes we don't talk, and sometimes we see but we can't do anything about that. But I believe these kind of identities really affect, especially women of color, really face different challenges that sometimes they can't do anything about that. And I believe diversity, I really believe in diversity and inclusion, but I believe it's not the way that it should be in our society. It can be better. And, this is our responsibility to work on that, to make sure that, every place, every workplace that we work, we really see that as one of the things that we have to work on that. Because, women's, they have ability, but we have to make sure that we value their identities and we value the power that they have. Thank you.
Well, thank you, ladies, so much for all of your input. I thought this was so beneficial. And I know that one of our students had asked for some information from you all in the chat box. So thank you for those of you that were able to participate in that. It's super helpful for folks to be able to follow up if they have additional questions. And I appreciate you making yourself available. And so with that being said, I think we're going to finish things up for the day because we're just at about 2 o'clock. So I just want to thank you again, panelists, for joining us. This was just incredibly valuable, and I'm excited to hear more from you all in the future about all the great work you're doing in the space of women in the workplace. And just thank you again for joining us. And for everyone else, thank you for joining our little seminar today. I hope you found some value in it. All of our contact information is on the slide, as well as our social media.